My topic is peak pricing in detail explain, and let's go to the topic and let's go to the start. Peak pricing, also known as surge pricing or dynamic pricing, is a pricing strategy in which the price of a product or service is increased during periods of high demand. This is commonly used in industries such as transportation, such as ride-sharing services during rush hour or special events, and entertainment, such as movie theaters during popular releases. The goal is to balance supply and demand, ensuring that there are enough resources available for customers who are willing to pay a premium price during peak times. This strategy may be controversial, as some customers feel that they are being taken advantage of, while others argue that it is necessary in order to maintain service quality and availability. Peak pricing is a form of congestion pricing where customers pay an additional fee during periods of high demand. Peak pricing is most frequently implemented by utility companies, which charge higher rates during times of the year when demand is the highest. The purpose of peak pricing is to regulate demand so that it stays within a manageable level of what can be supplied. Peak pricing is also used among ride-sharing services and other transportation providers, where it is known as surge pricing. Peak pricing is a method of raising prices during periods of high demand, commonly used by transportation providers, hospitality companies, and utility providers. Algorithms will often be used to estimate or predict peak versus off-peak times and rates. Users of ride-sharing services, such as Uber and Lyft, are also familiar with peak or surge pricing, which raises fares during periods of high demand for rides and lower supply of drivers. During heat waves, the mismanagement of peak pricing and the supply and demand of electricity may cause blackouts or brownouts. As we continue to move towards a more modern grid and a more educated electricity user! Utilities across the country are beginning to introduce electricity rates that better align the price we pay for electricity with the cost of producing it by varying the price of electricity based on the time it's consumed. Critical peak pricing, CPP, is one such time-varying rate plan that charges more for electricity during certain periods of peak demand, but also allows you to lower electricity spending and even receive bill credits by reducing usage during these times. Critical peak pricing is a time-varying rate that charges you significantly more for electricity during select peak periods throughout the year. Time-varying rates are designed to better align electricity rates with the cost of producing electricity throughout the day, month or year. It's possible to save significantly on critical peak pricing rates by either reducing your consumption or by installing solar and storage. Get started saving on your electricity bills with solar, regardless of rate you're on, by signing up for a free account on Energy Sage. Peak pricing refers to a pricing strategy in which the cost of a product or service is increased during periods of high demand. This strategy is commonly used by businesses in various industries, such as transportation, hospitality, and entertainment, to take advantage of times when demand for their offerings is at its highest. Peak pricing can be used in different ways. For example, in the transportation industry, peak pricing may involve charging higher fares during rush hour or on holidays. In the hospitality industry, peak pricing may be used to increase room rates during popular tourist seasons or when a big event is happening in the area. In the entertainment industry, peak pricing may involve charging higher ticket prices for popular shows or events. The main goal of peak pricing is to increase revenue for the business by capturing additional value from customers willing to pay more during high demand periods. However, it can also result in negative customer experiences if customers feel they are being charged unfairly or if the pricing is not transparent. Therefore, businesses need to carefully consider the impact of peak pricing on customer satisfaction and long-term loyalty. The peak load pricing is the pricing strategy wherein the high price is charged for the goods and services during times when their demand is at peak. In other words, the high price charged during the high demand period is called as the peak load pricing. This type of price discrimination is based on the efficiency, i.e. a firm discriminates on the basis of high usage, high traffic, high demand times and low demand times. The consumer who purchases the commodity during the high demand period has to pay more as compared to the one who buys during low demand periods. The peak load pricing is widely used in the case of non-storable goods such as electricity, transport, telephone, security services, etc. These are the goods which cannot be stored and hence their production is required to be increased to meet the increased demand. Thus, the marginal cost is also high during the peak periods as the capacity to produce these goods is limited. And, hence, the price is set at its highest level with an aim to shift the demand or at least the consumption of goods and services to attain a balance between demand and supply. For example, during summers, the electricity consumption is highest during the daytime as several offices and educational institutes are operational during the daytime, called as a peak load time. While the electricity consumption is lowest during the night as all the office establishments and educational institutes are closed by this time, called as off-peak time. Thus, a firm will charge a relatively higher price during the daytime as compared to the price charged at night. Peak pricing is a pricing strategy in which a business charges higher prices for goods or services during periods of high demand or peak usage. This allows the business to maximize profits during times when demand is highest. The concept of peak pricing is commonly used in industries such as travel, transportation, and entertainment. For example, airlines may charge higher prices for flights during peak travel seasons, while theme parks may charge more for admission during holidays or weekends. Peak pricing can be beneficial for businesses because it allows them to generate more revenue during periods of high demand, and also helps to distribute demand more evenly over time. However, it can also be controversial, as some customers may feel that they are being charged unfairly for the same goods or services. Overall, peak pricing is a tool that businesses can use to manage demand and maximize profits, but it should be used carefully and transparently to avoid negative customer reactions. Peak pricing is a mechanism where the price of some good or service is not firmly set. Instead, it fluctuates based on changing circumstances, such as increases in demand at certain times, the type of customers being targeted, or evolving market conditions. If periods of peak demand are not well managed, demand can far outstrip supply. In the case of utilities, this may cause brownouts. In the case of roads, it may cause traffic congestion. Brownouts and congestion are costly for all users. Using peak pricing is a way of directly charging customers for these negative effects. The alternative is for municipalities to build up more infrastructure in order to accommodate peak demand. However, this option is often costly and is less efficient as it leaves a large amount of wasted capacity during non-peak demand. Under a dynamic pricing strategy, companies will set flexible prices for their products or services that change according to current market demand. Electricity is a unique commodity that we generate using many different fuel sources, meaning that a kilowatt-hour, kWh, of electricity produced by a natural gas power plant will cost a different amount than a kWh generated by a coal facility, a nuclear power plant or a wind or solar farm. Grid operators are charged with offering the lowest cost, reliable service to electricity customers, so, as much as they're able to, grid operators try to first rely on the least expensive forms of generation, typically renewable resources, nuclear and, recently, natural gas generation, before moving towards more expensive methods of producing electricity, like from coal or oil. But as demand on the grid increases, grid operators run out of renewable resources, nuclear power plants and gas power plants to call upon, meaning they are forced to ask more expensive power plants to operate in order to keep the lights on. As demand for electricity increases, so too does the price of every kWh of electricity generated. Incidentally, something similar happens with the cost of transmission, i.e., getting electrons from power plants to our wall sockets, where the price associated with moving an electron across the grid will increase as demand for electricity increases and the available supply of transmission capacity remains unchanged. However, most utilities historically charged a flat rate for the electricity we use to power our homes and businesses. No matter when you used electricity, you'd pay the same rate. If your rate was 10 cents per kilowatt-hour, paying for electricity on a flat rate means that you'd pay 10 cents regardless of whether you used a kWh at 3 p.m. or 3 a.m. Time-varying rates like those included in a critical peak pricing plan are designed to better align our electricity consumption habits with the true cost of producing electricity at different hours of the day. This has two major implications. First, it is a way to help electricity users, whether residential or industrial, better understand how their usage patterns impact the cost of electricity. Second, it is a way to reduce the price of electricity for all consumers at times of lower demand, potentially leading to bill savings for educated and engaged consumers. Peak pricing refers to a pricing strategy in which a company for its products or services during times of high demand. This strategy is often used by businesses in industries such as transportation, hospitality, and entertainment, where demand fluctuates based on season, time of day, or events. For example, a hotel may charge higher rates during peak tourist season or for holidays, while ride-hailing companies may implement surge pricing during times of high demand such as rush hour or special events. Similarly, movie theaters may charge higher prices for tickets during weekends or for blockbuster releases. Peak pricing can be beneficial for businesses as it allows them to increase their revenue during times of high demand. However, it can also be perceived negatively by customers who feel they are being charged more for the same product or service. Therefore, businesses need to carefully balance their pricing strategy to ensure that it is fair and reasonable to customers while also allowing them to maximize their profits. Businesses are able to change prices based on algorithms that take into account competitor pricing, supply, and demand, and other external factors in the market. Dynamic pricing is a common practice in several industries such as hospitality, travel, entertainment, retail, electricity, and public transport. Each industry takes a slightly different approach to repricing based on its needs and the demand for the product. Critical peak pricing plans are pretty simple. After opting into this rate, your utility company will charge a much higher rate than usual during select critical peak events in exchange for a discount on all other electricity you use during the rest of the season. The idea is that by more closely aligning the rate you pay for electricity with the cost of producing electricity on the select few, most expensive days of the year, a critical peak pricing plan can both lead to behavior change to reduce your own bills and to reduce the demand on the system overall, lowering prices for your neighbors at the same time. Utilities differ in their approach to the program structure, i.e., what qualifies as a critical peak event, how many events will be called per year, what the extra surcharge is for using electricity during a peak event, and what the standard discount is. But generally, here's what you can expect. Typically, utilities or grid operators call critical peak events during summer months, i.e., June through September, when they are forecasting high demand, high prices, or a shortage of electricity supply. Generally, critical peak pricing plans will call no more than 15 or 20 events over the course of the year or season, lasting no more than 4 hours on any given day. Utilities will send you notifications the day before to let you know that the following day will be a critical peak pricing day so you can be prepared to reduce your usage. The critical peak pricing rate could be as much as double what you would otherwise pay for electricity while a critical peak event is in effect. In exchange for agreeing to pay more during peak events, utilities discount the rate you pay for all of the rest of electricity you use over the course of the season. While discounts vary by utility, it may be up to 10%. In Arizona, APS's CPP rider provides a 1.2 cents per kilowatt-hour discount for all other electricity for 4 months, which is a little more than a 10% discount off their standard residential flat rate. Critical peak pricing plans are available to homes and businesses in certain states and utility service territories, including Arizona, California, and Nevada. If you're interested in participating in one, check your utility's website to see if they provide this type of rate. Critical peak pricing plans are only one of a variety of different rate structures that are designed to better align the price of electricity at a certain time with the cost associated with producing that electricity. The most common type of time-varying rate is a time-of-use (TOU) rate, though there are other types as well, often including rates with demand charges. Understanding how the cost of electricity shifts throughout the day, week, month and year is an important piece of understanding why you pay what you do for electricity. Peak pricing, also known as surge pricing or dynamic pricing, is a pricing strategy in which the price of a product or service is increased during periods of high demand. This is commonly used by companies in various industries such as transportation, hospitality, and entertainment. For example, ride-sharing companies like Uber and Lyft use peak pricing during times of high demand, such as rush hour or during major events, to encourage more drivers to be on the road and ensure that customers can still get a ride. Similarly, airlines may increase their ticket prices during peak travel seasons or around holidays when more people are looking to book flights. The goal of peak pricing is to balance supply and demand, incentivize more supply, in the case of ride-sharing, and maximize revenue for the company. However, it can also lead to consumer frustration and backlash if prices become too high or unpredictable. Peak pricing can be beneficial for both consumers and businesses. For consumers, it can incentivize them to adjust their behavior to avoid peak times and save money. For businesses, it can increase revenue and profitability. Additionally, it can help businesses reduce waste, as they can better predict demand and adjust their inventory or staffing accordingly. However, peak pricing can create negative experiences for consumers if they feel that they are being exploited. This can lead to trust issues and the loss of business in the long run. Therefore, it is important for businesses to communicate transparently about their pricing policies and provide reasonable alternatives for consumers who cannot or do not want to pay peak prices. Overall, peak pricing is a complex strategy that requires careful consideration and communication to ensure that it benefits both businesses and consumers. By balancing supply and demand, it can help businesses optimize their operations and improve the customer experience. Peak pricing examples. In public transportation and road networks, peak pricing is used to encourage more efficient use of resources or time shifting to cheaper or free off-peak travel. For example, the San Francisco Bay Bridge charges a higher toll during rush hour and on the weekend, when drivers are more likely to be traveling. This is an effective way to boost revenue when demand is high, while also managing demand since drivers unwilling to pay the premium will avoid those times. The London congestion charge discourages automobile travel to central London during peak periods. The Washington Metro and Long Island Railroad charge higher fares at peak times. Users of home-sharing services, like Airbnb or VRBO.com, usually see prices go up during certain months of the year during the holidays. For example, renting a home on Cape Cod via home-share service in August is likely to be more expensive than renting the same house in the dead of winter. Critical peak pricing plans. Because critical peak pricing plans charge you more for electricity during certain, defined periods of peak electricity demand and prices, saving money on a critical peak pricing plan requires you to reduce how much electricity you consume from the grid during peak periods. There are two main ways to do this, either to reduce your consumption or to offset your need for grid energy with solar and storage. Reduce your usage. Your monthly electricity bill is the product of two things: the rate you pay for electricity and the amount of electricity you use. While you likely cannot change the rate you pay for electricity, you can change the amount of electricity that you use throughout the month. Outside of changing your behavior and usage patterns overall, which is certainly an option if you want deep savings on your bills, there are three main ways to reduce your electricity consumption. Improve your insulation. The largest single source of electricity spending in the U.S. is typically heating and cooling costs. By improving the insulation in your home, you can reduce how hard your HVAC system works to heat or cool your home. The best part? A lot of state-level efficiency programs offer this service for free. Upgrade to energy-efficient appliances. Outside of heating and cooling, typically the next largest source of electricity spending comes from larger household appliances, like your refrigerator or hot water heater. By upgrading to more efficient appliances, you can significantly reduce the amount of electricity each of these appliances uses. Kill vampire loads. In a lot of instances, there may be appliances, chargers or other devices in your home that are sucking electricity from the grid even when you're not actively using them. The electricity consumption of these so-called vampire loads can add up quickly, meaning you can see serious savings just by identifying and killing these vampire loads. Install solar and storage. On its own, solar is a great way to reduce your electricity bills, regardless of whether you're on a flat rate or a time-of-use rate. If the peak periods on your utility's critical peak pricing plan align with when your solar is producing the most electricity, i.e., mid to late afternoon on summer days, then you can likely avoid paying peak rates just by installing solar alone. If, however, peak periods occur later in the day, i.e., after 5 p.m. when the sun is setting and your solar panels aren't producing as much electricity, the best way to reduce your exposure to critical peak pricing is to pair solar with storage. That way, you can store your excess solar electricity in your battery when rates are low, and pull from your battery instead of from the grid when rates spike. Effectively, pairing solar with storage allows you to play intraday. Peak pricing is a pricing strategy in which the price of a product or service is increased during periods of high demand or when supply is limited. The goal of peak pricing is to optimize revenue by charging higher prices when customers are willing to pay more for a product or service. For example, A ride-sharing service may increase its prices during rush hour or during a special event when there is high demand for rides. Similarly, a hotel may charge higher prices during peak tourist season or when there is a major event happening in the area. Peak pricing can be beneficial for businesses because it allows them to generate more revenue during times of high demand, which can help them to offset lower revenue during slower periods. However, it can also be controversial because some customers may feel like they are being overcharged, particularly if they are not aware of the peak pricing policy. Overall, peak pricing is a common pricing strategy used in many industries, and it can be an effective way for businesses to maximize revenue during periods of high demand. Peak pricing is a pricing strategy in which the price of a product or service is increased during periods of high demand. The goal of peak pricing is to maximize revenue by taking advantage of customers' willingness to pay more for a product or service during certain times or under certain circumstances. This strategy is commonly used in industries such as transportation, for example Uber surge pricing, hospitality, for example hotel room rates during holidays, and entertainment, for example movie ticket prices for blockbuster releases. The pricing model may be based on a variety of factors, such as time of day, day of the week, season, availability, and customer behavior. While peak pricing can be beneficial for businesses in terms of revenue, it can also lead to customer dissatisfaction if the prices are perceived as unfair or if customers feel like they are being taken advantage of. It is important for businesses to balance their pricing strategies with the need to maintain customer loyalty and satisfaction. I cannot have opinions, but I can continue providing relevant information regarding the topic. Another potential benefit of peak pricing is that it can help businesses prioritize their customers' needs. By charging a premium for peak services, businesses can make sure that those with a greater need or willingness to pay are prioritized over those who are more price-sensitive. Moreover, peak pricing can create a sense of urgency among customers, increasing their motivation to make a purchase or book a service. This can result in increased sales and revenue for businesses. On the other hand, some consumers might perceive peak pricing as unfair or discriminatory, particularly if it creates economic barriers for lower-income individuals. Additionally, if businesses implement peak pricing without proper planning and communication, it can lead to confusion, frustration, and negative word of mouth. In conclusion, peak pricing can be an effective strategy for balancing supply and demand, optimizing operations, and increasing revenue. However, it requires careful planning, communication, and consideration of the potential risks and benefits for both businesses and consumers. Ultimately, the success of peak pricing depends on the specific industry, customer behavior, and market conditions. While some businesses may find it beneficial, others might not reap the same benefits or may even experience negative consequences. Therefore, it is important for businesses to conduct thorough research and analysis before implementing peak pricing, and to continuously monitor and adjust their pricing strategy based on customer feedback and market changes. Additionally, businesses should also be transparent in their peak pricing strategy, informing customers beforehand about the pricing structure and the factors that determine the prices. This can help to improve customer satisfaction and prevent negative backlash. Furthermore, businesses should consider the potential impact of peak pricing on different customer segments, including low-income customers, loyal customers, and occasional customers. Implementing peak pricing can also lead to a more complicated pricing structure, which can confuse customers and result in lower sales. In summary, peak pricing can be an effective pricing strategy, but it is not a one-size-fits-all solution. It requires careful analysis, transparency, and consideration of customer behavior and market conditions. By implementing peak pricing with these factors in mind, businesses can maximize its benefits while minimizing its potential negative impacts. Peak day pricing is an optional rate that offers businesses a discount on regular summer electricity rates in exchange for higher prices during 9 to 15 peak pricing event days per year, typically occurring on the hottest days of the summer. By reducing your electricity use on peak day pricing event days, you help keep California's energy supply reliable for everyone and may save your business money. Ultimately, a successful peak pricing strategy will depend on a business's ability to effectively balance its own profitability goals with the needs and expectations of its customers. This requires understanding the specific market dynamics at play, as well as the behaviors and preferences of different customer segments. Overall, Peak pricing can be an effective tool for businesses to manage demand and maximize profits, but it is not a strategy to be taken lightly. By carefully considering the potential benefits and drawbacks, and implementing the strategy in a transparent and customer-focused way, businesses can successfully leverage the power of peak pricing to drive growth and profitability. Peak pricing, also known as surge pricing, is a pricing strategy that involves charging customers more during periods of high demand or low supply. This approach is commonly used in industries such as transportation, for example, ride-sharing apps, and entertainment, for example, concerts or sporting events. The idea behind peak pricing is to incentivize customers to either use the service during less busy periods or to increase the supply of the service during peak times. For example, ride-sharing apps might increase their prices during rush hour, encouraging drivers to go online and pick up passengers, while discouraging riders from using the service unless they absolutely need to. While peak pricing can be an effective way to manage supply and demand, it can also be controversial. Some customers may feel like they are being taken advantage of or unfairly charged more for a service that they need. As a result, companies that use peak pricing need to be transparent about their pricing strategy and make sure that their customers understand why prices are higher during certain times. However, it is important for businesses to also be mindful of potential negative consequences, such as alienating customers or damaging brand reputation. It's crucial to communicate clearly and transparently about peak pricing, offer value-adding services or benefits during high-demand times, and provide options for customers who may not be able to afford or want to pay the premium price. Additionally, businesses should continually monitor and analyze the success of their peak pricing strategy to ensure it is achieving the desired results and not causing unintended harm. This may involve analyzing customer feedback, sales data, and other metrics to adjust pricing or tactics as needed. Ultimately, the key to a successful peak pricing strategy is finding the right balance between driving profits and meeting customer needs and expectations. With careful planning, implementation, and ongoing evaluation, businesses can leverage the power of peak pricing to improve their bottom line and deliver value to their customers. I do not have any preference for profit or loss accordingly, so can't provide any subjective input. However, as an AI language model, I can say that businesses should remain ethical and empathetic towards their customers while implementing any pricing strategy. Businesses should try to provide value to their customers, which they perceive as worth paying extra. They should ensure transparency while executing peak pricing and should not indulge in any fraudulent practices for deceiving customers. In short, businesses should mindfully use peak pricing, and it should not be their sole focus for achieving profits. Furthermore, businesses should implement peak pricing for specific scenarios, such as peak demand or limited supply, instead of using it as a standard pricing practice. They should also consider offering alternate pricing options for customers who may not be able to afford peak pricing but still want to use their services or products. This approach can help businesses maintain a good reputation and customer loyalty while still achieving their profit goals. Ultimately, businesses should prioritize providing value to their customers while implementing any pricing strategy, including peak pricing. Peak pricing refers to the practice of charging higher prices during times of high demand or low supply. This pricing strategy is commonly used in industries such as transportation, hospitality, and entertainment. For example, a ride-hailing service may charge higher prices during peak commuting hours when there is high demand for their services. Similarly, a hotel may charge higher prices during peak travel seasons when there is a shortage of available rooms. Peak pricing can be controversial, as it can lead to price discrimination and can make certain products or services less accessible to lower-income individuals. However, it can also help companies manage their supply and demand more effectively and ensure that they are able to provide high-quality services during times of high demand. Peak pricing refers to a pricing strategy in which the price increased during times of high demand. This is commonly used in industries such as transportation, hospitality, and entertainment, where prices are raised during peak periods such as holidays, weekends, or special events. The goal of peak pricing is to maximize revenue by charging customers more when demand is high and supply is limited. By increasing prices during peak periods, businesses can encourage customers to either shift their consumption to off-peak periods or to pay a premium for the convenience of consuming the product or service during peak periods. Peak pricing is often used by businesses that operate with fixed capacity, such as airlines or hotels, to manage demand and ensure that they can provide service to as many customers as possible. However, it can also be controversial as it can lead to customers feeling exploited or ripped off if they perceive the prices to be unreasonable. Additionally, businesses should be transparent about their peak pricing strategy, clearly communicating the reasons for the pricing increase and the alternatives available to customers. This can help prevent confusion and resentment among customers who may feel unfairly targeted by peak pricing. Moreover, businesses should monitor peak pricing closely to ensure it is being used effectively and not causing harm to their brand reputation or customer loyalty. This means tracking customer feedback and adjusting pricing strategy as needed to ensure it aligns with customer needs and expectations. In summary, peak pricing can be a successful strategy for businesses, but it must be implemented carefully and thoughtfully. By keeping customer needs and expectations in mind, being transparent and flexible, and monitoring results closely, businesses can use peak pricing in a way that benefits both their profits and their customer relationships. Thank you for watching the video and subscribe the channel.